Let's talk about raids. Raid! Oh, sorry, that was a 1980s commercial. I believe I have just dated myself. Raids are actually kind of an underutilized part of the Landover game. You're going to want to learn when to use them, how to use them, and why they're so important. When it is your turn, you can raid one opponent per turn with your one catapult. Now, what does it mean to raid? Well, you need at least a military power of 1, because when you raid, your military power will go down by 1. In fact, if you have 1 sheep and 1 wheat, you could immediately replenish that military power after you were done raiding. Again, you can only raid 1 person per turn, and if you raided somebody on the previous turn, and your raid is still in effect, which is to say your catapult is still somewhere on the board, you actually have to move your 1 catapult to the new square that you are raiding. So you really only have the chance to have your raid catapult down on 1 hexagon at a time. Take a look at the board right here. The red team has the catapult down and a raid has been done, actually in a very clever spot. Let's look at the bottom right of our screen, and we will see that the blue team has been investing a lot of resources to build villages around the gold tile. Of course, that's the best resource tile. And that is also at number 9, which is one of the more common numbers. So in order to prevent any harvesting of resources, the red team has sort of taken one for the team, if you want to call it that, and placed his catapult on that square. Basically, it makes it a dead tile. How is a catapult removed? Well, there's actually 2 ways. Number 1, if anybody on the board rolls a 7, all the catapults are wiped clean. They go back in the player's hands, waiting for redeployment later on. Also, there is one particular development card that will help you remove a catapult. So until one of those things happens, you are kind of stuck with that catapult. In this case, the blue team, sorry, you get nothing when a 9 is rolled on this tile because the catapult has been placed. Now, only 1 catapult, which is to say only 1 raiding symbol, is available per player. So when it comes back around to red's turn, if red wants to deploy another raid, red would actually have to take the catapult off the 9, thus making the 9 useful again, and putting that red catapult somewhere else. You're not going to do that very often, but hey, if somebody jumps out to a big lead and the red team really needs to stop that player or somehow stop a particular resource, then you are able to do that if you want to. Also, one neat thing, when you actually deploy your catapult to raid someone, you steal 1 random resource from everybody that is touching that hexagon. Potentially, there could actually be 3 different opponents touching 1 tile. More than likely, though, it's just going to be 1 or 2. In this particular case, it's actually blue running all the way around that hexagon. Now, you don't get to steal 3 resources from blue. You only get to steal 1, even though I totally get that there are 3 villages there. So in the deploying of your catapult, you are going to gain some resources in addition to blocking the usefulness of that catapult until a 7 is rolled or until a development card is played to clear off that catapult. Now, let's go back to our full board and explain why raiding is going to be a very important part of my strategy going forward. If you take a look over on the right, I'm Team Brown. So the brown catapult is not on the screen right now. Also, I'm not struggling at all on military, even though my military will go down by 1. If you take a look at the right side of the screen, Team Brown has a military of 3. Nobody else has anything higher than 1. So I'm not in any danger at all if the barbarian raid ends up getting all the way to the right, not in the least. And if you look at the placement of the brown villages and the brown cities, then I'm not struggling at all to acquire the sheep or the wheat. I'm going to keep on getting more sheep and more wheat. So you can expect that later on in this game, there's going to be a lot of raiding from the brown team. It just totally makes sense in this particular position. Also, there are some gold tiles on the board. There's even a gold tile in the bottom left, also a number 9. That one seems kind of right for a raid later in the game. If you're a person who has a lot of wheat and sheep and can replenish your military power easy, then it's kind of a no-brainer to raid someone because you can always get that military power back since you have an abundance of sheep and wheat. There is one other clever little aspect to this game. There's a way to make a raid even if you don't have a wheat or a sheep. It's just called the Lucky 7 raid. That's right, we're going to Vegas with this one. The gods of Landover have always rooted for the underdog. So if a 7 is rolled on the board and you are in solo last place, by the way, That's Team Pink right here. Danny. If Danny rolls a 7 on this turn, because he has 8 victory points and everybody else has more than 8, he's definitely in clean last place. He gets to actually deploy his raid anywhere on the board and of course steal those resources from anybody that's on that tile. So in this particular case, Danny, he probably wants to create his own resources by rolling on his numbers, but if he happens to roll a 7, don't despair. He actually gets that free raid. The Lucky 7 feature is a feature you can turn on or off when you're creating a custom game, but the default is on, and I find it kind of nice. It's like that catch-up feature in Mario Kart where you get the really good stuff when you're in second place. But in Landover, you have to be in last place for the Lucky 7 raid. Well, there you go, kids. That's all you need to know about raids. The veteran Landover players will use them wisely, and you should too.